Have you ever noticed how the people who truly hold power rarely make a sound? They don't argue. They don't prove. They don't even try to convince you they're right. And yet somehow, the world bends quietly in their favor. It almost feels unfair. While everyone else shouts to be heard, they whisper, and still win. But what if this isn't luck? What if it's a forgotten law of power? One Machiavelli understood centuries ago, and the modern world lost along the way. Most people believe power means control. They think shouting louder, pushing harder, and moving faster is strength. But the truth? That isn't strength. It's desperation, disguised as dominance. Because the moment you need to prove your power, you've already lost it. Look around. The ones who talk the most about control usually have the least of it. They argue to be right. They fight to be seen. And they chase respect that never truly arrives. Why? Because force may create fear, but fear never creates loyalty. The loud leader commands obedience only while people are watching. But the quiet one, the one who moves with calm certainty, commands respect even in silence. Real power doesn't chase. It attracts. It doesn't demand. It invites. It's not the lion that roars the loudest who rules the jungle. It's the one whose presence makes others step aside without a sound. And this is where Machiavelli's true genius begins. Not in manipulation, but in mastery of perception. He understood something most people still don't. People don't follow force. They follow certainty. Certainty doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it doesn't try to convince you it's right, it simply is. Think about it. When you meet someone who is deeply calm, unshaken, and clear about who they are, your instincts lean toward them, not because they forced you to, but because their energy whispers something your mind can't ignore. This person knows where they're going. That's the kind of silent gravity Machiavelli studied, the kind that bends people's will without ever breaking it. He wrote that men are moved more by appearances than by reality, not because people are shallow, but because perception shapes emotion, and emotion shapes loyalty. So while the world exhausts itself trying to control, the wise learn to project certainty. They understand that authority is not taken, it's granted, and people only grant it to those who seem to need nothing from them. True strength, then, is not in the hand that strikes, but in the mind that never flinches, and certainty doesn't need to scream. It's the calm voice in the storm, the still figure in the chaos, the quiet force that everyone somehow ends up following, not because they were told to, but because something inside them simply wanted to. That's not control. That's command. And that's the illusion of force. The secret Machiavelli saw centuries ago, hidden in plain sight. Watch the most powerful people in any room. They move slower. They speak less. Because silence does something words can't. It makes people wonder. When you pause before you speak, others rush to fill the silence with their own noise. Their need for approval betrays them. Their desire to be seen exposes what they're protecting. But you, by simply waiting, gain everything they reveal for free. Stillness is not the absence of action. It's the presence of control. It's what separates those who react from those who rule. Machiavelli understood this long before the age of endless noise. He saw that most people destroy their own advantage because they can't endure silence. They speak when they should listen. They reveal when they should observe. They rush when they should wait. And in their rush to be noticed, they become predictable. But the one who masters stillness becomes unreadable, and therefore unstoppable. Because when people can't read you, they can't prepare for you. They start to project their own fears and hopes onto your silence, imagining power where there may be none. And that illusion alone becomes real. Stillness bends perception, and perception shapes power. Think of the great strategists of history. They never fought every battle. They waited until the field itself favored them. The less they moved, the more their opponents revealed. Even nature follows this law. The tiger doesn't roar before it strikes. It waits, utterly still, until the moment is perfect. That's what the modern world forgets. In an age that worships speed, stillness feels like weakness. But in truth, it's the ultimate form of control, because it forces everyone else to move around you. When you are calm in chaos, you become the reference point others measure themselves against. Your composure becomes authority. Your patience becomes pressure. And your silence becomes a mirror that shows others who they really are. Machiavelli would say, "Never do your enemy a small injury." And silence is the perfect weapon for that. Because it doesn't wound the body, it unravels the mind. It makes people question themselves. It makes them wonder what you know, what you're planning, what you're capable of. And in that uncertainty, they hand you control. Stillness isn't passive. It's deliberate. It's the art of letting others reveal their weakness while you conserve your strength. So remember, in a world that moves too fast to think, power belongs to the one who can wait. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Humans crave validation. We're addicted to being seen, heard, understood. It's our deepest need, to feel that our words matter, that our presence leaves an impression. So when someone doesn't rush to explain themselves, when they remain still, calm, unreadable, our minds panic. We start filling in the blanks ourselves. We project meaning onto their silence. We assume confidence, control, even superiority. And that assumption alone becomes power. Because power isn't always taken. Sometimes it's given unconsciously, handed over to the one who seems least desperate to receive it. This is the psychology Machiavelli understood. He knew that people reveal everything through their reactions, and that the one who controls their emotions controls the entire field. When someone criticizes you and you don't react, they start questioning their own words. When they try to provoke you and you remain calm, they lose certainty because your silence denies them validation. That's the secret most people miss. Power doesn't lie in domination. It lies in emotional discipline. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, but only a few can stay still in the storm and make others wonder why the storm doesn't move them. Machiavelli hinted at this in his writings. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally, because the fool acts from emotion, but the wise act from clarity. The moment you learn to delay your reaction, you create space, and that space becomes your advantage. In that pause, others reveal themselves, their insecurities, their intentions, their weaknesses, and while they're busy trying to decode your silence, you're already reading their entire strategy. Psychologically, silence creates tension, and the human mind hates tension. We crave resolution, so we fill the void with assumptions, and those assumptions usually favor the one who seems least affected. That's why the calm are mistaken for strong, the slow for wise, and the silent for powerful. Because in a world ruled by noise, restraint feels supernatural. True influence, then, is not about forcing outcomes. It's about controlling perception through emotional stillness. It's not about what you say, but what you don't need to say. The one who speaks less makes every word heavier. The one who waits longer makes every move more meaningful. This is the silent path Machiavelli hinted at. Influence born not from manipulation, but from mastery of self. Because the moment you can stay still while others lose control, you stop being part of the game and start directing it. While they react to every move, you observe the board. While they fight for attention, you command it effortlessly. And when the time finally comes to act, you won't need to shout or argue or prove. Because by then, everyone's already looking your way, wondering what you'll do next. That's the psychology of silent power. And it's not about being emotionless. It's about being unmoved. Because true control isn't about suppressing others. It's about mastering yourself so completely that nothing outside of you can dictate how you move within. Machiavelli's forgotten law was simple. Power belongs to those who need nothing, not approval, not attention, not recognition. Because the moment you stop depending on others to define you, you become the only one in control of your value. When you no longer need to be seen, people start to see you everywhere. When you stop chasing outcomes, outcomes start moving toward you. This isn't magic. It's psychology. People are drawn to emotional gravity, and silence, when it's intentional, carries the heaviest weight of all. In a world addicted to noise, the one who can remain still creates an invisible pull, a magnetic calm that others can't resist. They may not even know why, but they find themselves drawn toward you, seeking approval from the one who doesn't seem to need it. That's the paradox of power Machiavelli understood. The less you need, the more you attract. The more you chase, the further it runs. Because dependence is visible, and visibility gives others leverage. But when you move through the world with quiet self-sufficiency, you become untouchable, Machiavelli wrote. Men should either be treated generously or destroyed because they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot. What he meant was deeper than politics. It was about energy. Never move halfway, never reveal half your intent, and never depend on half the world to validate your worth. Power, real power, comes from emotional independence, the ability to act without the need for reassurance. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're unaffected by who notices. That's what makes you dangerous in silence, because while others perform, you prepare. While they talk, you position. While they seek validation, you build inevitability. And when the moment comes to move, you do so quietly. But the impact echoes louder than any speech could. This is the essence of Machiavelli's hidden law. Not deception, not cold manipulation, but self-possession, the discipline to remain whole in a world that constantly pulls you apart. Because when you no longer need the world's permission, the world starts to move with your permission. It's not about indifference, it's about internal clarity. When nothing outside of you has the power to disturb your inner state, you become the axis around which others revolve. That's why the still ones are so unsettling. They remind others of what they've lost, their own composure. You don't have to dominate the room to control it. You only need to stand in it with a calmness no one else can maintain. That calmness is your throne. Your silence is your armor. Your detachment is your weapon. Machiavelli's law wasn't a rule for kings. It was a mirror for the human mind. Power doesn't come from what you can take, but from what you can walk away from. Because when nothing owns you, everything answers to you. And that is the hidden law of silent power. The law the modern world has forgotten, but the wise still live by quietly as they shape the chaos without ever being seen. So how do you walk the silent path today? Before any major decision, ask yourself, am I reacting or positioning? Am I seeking to prove or to understand? Am I trying to control or quietly influencing? Because every time you react, you give away your center. Every emotional response hands someone else the power to shape your direction. But when you learn to pause, to breathe, to watch, to wait, you reclaim that power. You don't win every battle by fighting. Some you win by waiting. Because in stillness you gather data. You observe motives. You watch patterns. You let the noise burn itself out until the moment to act arrives. And then, you strike once, decisively, without hesitation. That's how real influence works in the modern world. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You just need to be the calmest one. Stillness lets you see what chaos hides. When everyone else rushes to fill the silence, they reveal themselves, their fears, their needs, their weaknesses. And all you have to do is listen. In business, this law is everything. You don't rush to pitch your idea. You let others talk first. And they'll tell you what they value, what they fear losing, what they truly want. Then, when you finally speak, every word hits exactly where it matters. In leadership, the same rule applies. The people who lead best are the ones who never compete for attention. They create calm, and others instinctively follow that calm. Their silence commands more than another's noise ever could. Even in relationships, this principle transforms everything. When you stop arguing to be understood, you start to understand. You notice the emotion behind the words, the need behind the conflict. And from that understanding, influence is born. Because stillness is awareness. And awareness over time becomes authority. Machiavelli would have called it strategic patience, the ability to wait for the world to move first. He knew that the one who reacts last is often the one who decides how the story ends. That's how the silent path works. It doesn't demand. It observes. It aligns with timing. And when the timing is right, it moves with such precision that it feels effortless. But make no mistake, stillness is not passivity. It's preparation. It's what allows you to move with certainty instead of haste, to speak with conviction instead of noise, to command respect without ever having to ask for it. So in this modern world where everyone's shouting to be noticed, posting to be seen, rushing to be first, the rarest, most powerful act is to remain silent, steady, and strategic. Because eventually, noise fades, desperation exposes itself, but presence endures. When you master the art of doing less, you start achieving more. Not because the world changes, but because your energy does. You become a still point in a spinning world, unmoved yet moving everything around you. That's how you walk the silent path today. Not by chasing control. Doing less isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Silence is not emptiness, it's focus. It's the space where real power gathers itself. Because the ones who learn to walk quietly eventually find that the world makes room for their footsteps. They don't fight for recognition. They don't chase opportunity. They simply align with it, through presence, not pressure. And the irony? When you stop forcing, you start attracting. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't about control over others. It was about control over yourself. He understood that the foundation of all influence is the ability to master your own impulses, your own reactions, your own need to be seen. That's where transformation begins, not in louder words, but in quieter intent. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. It means patience. It means choosing timing over tension. It means understanding that noise fades, but presence endures. Every move you make from stillness carries more weight. Every word you speak after silence lands with more force. The world begins to listen differently, because you've become different. You no longer respond to every challenge. You no longer need to explain your worth. You simply are. And that certainty radiates louder than any speech ever could. That's the transformation Machiavelli hinted at, from chasing to commanding, from proving to embodying. It's the moment you realize that power isn't about domination, it's about direction. You no longer run toward outcomes. You move as if they're already on their way to you. And they are. Because when your energy stops scattering in every direction, it begins to concentrate, and the world starts responding to that focus. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, to explain, to rush, to fill the silence, remember Machiavelli's forgotten wisdom. The loud seek attention. The silent command it. Because silence, when mastered, isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of power. And those who learn to dwell there, calm, patient, certain, discover that the world moves for them, not against them. That is the transformation. From noise to stillness, from effort to influence, from force to command. If this opened your mind like this video, so more thinkers can find it. And tell me in the comments, are you ready to stop chasing power and start embodying it? Because the silent path isn't just a strategy, it's a shift in identity. When you learn to move without noise, to act without explanation, to trust your presence instead of forcing it, something changes. The world no longer feels like a battlefield you have to conquer. It becomes a current that moves with you. That's what Machiavelli understood. That influence begins within. And when you master your inner state, everything external begins to align. So if you're walking this path, the path of quiet strength, of deliberate patience, of power without performance, you're not alone. This is your reminder. The loud seek attention, the silent command it. Follow for more timeless wisdom from history's sharpest minds, reimagined for the modern world. But by becoming the calm others cannot live without,